Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Letting Go of Her podcast. So, today I want to talk about kind of, I guess, a season of my life. A season of my life that I feel has been going on for a while. Or I get like spouts of this season from time to time. And I'm pretty sure that maybe many of us do, but I don't know. It's like I feel that people always talk about success, right? No one ever talks about their failures or how long it took them to get somewhere. All you ever see or hear about is like all the good things, right? And that can be because we don't like to talk about all the times that we failed, or we don't like being vulnerable, and we don't like opening up about things that we are struggling with. Um, so maybe it's just a matter of like me only listening to the good things, and not really hearing any of the bad things. But I want to talk about this because I feel that I can't be the only one who sometimes feels this way. And maybe I am, and maybe in some shape or form, someone out there listening can help me kind of overcome this. But I want to talk about um, the moments where it feels like God is being still. I feel that I've had moments where I can feel God's presence and I can see all the goodness and I can see where He's going with things. I can see, things popping up in my life, and this coming up and that coming up and all these different opportunities and whatever. But then there are seasons, and I want to say a lot of seasons, where it's just still. And it's almost like knock, knock, like, God, are you there? Are you listening? Are you working on something? Are you doing anything? Um, and it can honestly be um, very discouraging, right? Because I will see people that I know and friends, and um, things are happening for them, and things are coming up, and things are, there's opportunities and all this stuff, and sometimes it feels like my life is like at a standstill. Sometimes it feels like I don't know what God is doing for me. And, like, I know that sounds kinda bad, like, saying it out loud, right? Like, what do you mean God's not working in your life? What do you mean God's not doing anything? What do you mean God's not visible? Um, and I know that there is a purpose for when God is still, right? It's helping us trust in Him more. It's more of, like, finding peace, right? When there's nothing visible or nothing audible, even. But I also feel that it's like a sinful nature for us to want to see something happening. Because for us, it's hard to believe in something that like we can't physically see, right? Or it's hard to believe in something that we can't physically hear. And there are moments where it feels like we can't hear him, and we don't really know what he's doing. So I just kind of want to talk about those moments in your life where it feels like you're not being heard, or almost it feels like your prayers aren't being answered, right? It almost feels like nothing is happening. But we all know, because we've all been through seasons like this, and we've all overcome seasons like this, and we all know that God is working and God is always working. But it's just in that moment you feel almost like forgotten, and you feel almost as if unimportant. I don't know, and this could this could just be me and my own, childhood traumas, as you can call it, my own insecurities of just feeling that like I'm not being heard, I'm not being listened to, that whatever I want is unimportant. And, even saying like I want, right? Like my own selfishness is I want God to answer me this way and I want God to answer me that way. But that's not really how it works, right? It's never what we want, but it's always what He wants. Um, and it's and like I said, it's our own sinful nature to want what we want, and to be heard how we want to be heard, um, but also just feeling like we're not important to God. I've had many moments, and this is, me, me exploiting myself, me exploiting my sins, where like I feel jealousy and envious of how I can like visibly see how God is actively working in other people's lives. And it's always like, why isn't he working in my life that way? Or why isn't this grand gesture happening, right? Um, why isn't this happening for me or that happening for me? Like, why is it happening for them? What am I doing wrong? And I, as I'm saying all these things out loud, I really hope and pray that other people feel this way as well. And it's not just me, right? Maybe this is my own conviction here. Um, but it's something that, like, I feel that lately I have been thinking about a lot lately. Because I feel that right now in my life, it's just like at a standstill. I feel like there's nothing big going on, nothing big happening, nothing big about to happen. And I feel that I have been praying for answers or praying for direction, praying for guidance. And I feel as if God is just silent in my life. Now he could be preparing me with patience, because me, and I'm sure all of us, we all suffer with being patient with God, right? We want everything in our timing. Um, and we can blame this on our very short attention span. I think there's been like studies that have come out of like how we literally have an attention span of 3 seconds, I believe it is. And we can blame that on social media. We can blame that on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, I think. Or is it YouTube Reels? No, Instagram is Reels. YouTube Shorts. Where literally, like, if it doesn't catch your attention in 3 seconds, like, that's it. You're gone. You're scrolling up to the next video. Like, 3 seconds. Our attention span right now is 3 seconds. I feel like a goldfish has a larger attention span than we do. And we have obviously a very more complex brain than a goldfish, but we want things now, now, now. We can also blame Amazon Prime. Things started off as like 2 day shipping, right? Like that was the big thing of Amazon, where it's like, oh, I can get something in 2 days. But now they have where you can get things like next day or even like within the same day. Like you can order something off of your phone and you will receive it almost like immediately, right? And it's at the convenience of your own home. You don't actually have to get in your car. You don't actually have to drive somewhere. You don't actually have to go searching through the aisles to see if they have it, if they even have it. And if they don't have it there, you don't have to drive to a different location, right? Like, no, you can just on your phone figure out all that information and it would be delivered straight to your door. Same thing with like DoorDash and what's that other one called? Uber Eats. We don't ever use them because they're so ridiculously expensive. Whoever uses DoorDash or Uber Eats, please stop using them. Please get in your car and go drive and pick up your own food. um, but even that, like we can get on our phones and order our food and it'll get delivered to our front door. And we don't have to do absolutely anything. And I think that all of that honestly is just kind of poisoning us in a way. It's just making us less impatient. And we want God to act that way. We want to just get on our phones and somehow text him and be like, yo, what's up? Like what's going on? Like, why isn't this happening? And we expect like an immediate reply. But you know what we get from God? We get that little gray bubble with the three dots, and we wait and we wait, and then it disappears. And we don't know what he's saying, and we don't know what he's thinking. Um, and we just have to wait, right? But what we need to remember is that he knows, and he knows what's next. He knows the plan, and we don't have to know. We don't have to know the plan. That's the whole point of trusting in God, right? Is that even in the moments of stillness, even in the moments of like not feeling this grand gesture of God, even in the moments where it feels like he's not working in our lives, he is. And I feel that sometimes we have these moments of stillness just so that we can simply grow in trusting him more. Because we don't like silence, right? I don't like silence. I hate sitting in a room that is silent. That is like one of my worst fears, is just silence. I hate awkward silences, even though I tend to give lots of awkward silences because I'm just an awkwardly social person in general. Um, but we don't like silence. Silence scares us. But I truly believe that God uses silence in order to help us grow, in order to help us trust Him more. Because in those silent moments, in these moments like right now that I have in my life where I don't really know what direction I'm going in, I don't really know what direction God is pulling me, it's where I lean into Him more. It's where I'm like, okay, well, I don't have this to look forward to, or I don't have that I need to work on, or this. So I'm just going to open up my Bible and see what's in store for me today. I feel that in these moments where I'm not busy, right? In these moments where I'm waiting for His next step, it's when I tend to just kind of dwell more in the Word. It's where I actually open up my Bible and I actually spend time with God. Because when I'm busy or when I know that something's coming up, I don't I don't tend to do that, right? Because I'm like, no, I have to work on this and it's got to be perfect and I got to do this, right? When really the only person who can truly prepare us for whatever event or whatever thing or whatever situation that He has put in our path, like the only one who's going to truly and fully prepare us for that is Him. And how will He prepare us? Is by opening up our Bibles, by opening up to the Word and listening to what it is that He wants to tell us. But it is hard, though, at times, I will admit, because even though I open up my Bible and I'm reading and I'm like, okay, God, talk to me, there are days where I'm reading about how to build a tabernacle. And I'm just like, ah, what is God trying to tell me by giving me the measurements of the curtains and by giving me the measurements of this and of that? Like what is He trying to tell me right now? But and I'm mentioning this because right now we just finished reading the book of Exodus, and it at the end of that, he gives specific details. There's quite a few chapters, and he gives specific details on like how to build the tabernacle and the bronze and the silver and the gold and the mercy seat, and then the high priest and the uh, priestly garments, right? And how each sacrifice is to be made and what is for what and what's for that. And you can read that and you can be just like, why would God put that in there, right? Like, why would God want us to know this? And to be honest, like before, when I've gone through these passages, I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna skim on right through, right? Like, I'm like, this is of no um like immediate value to my life, right? Like, I'm not going to have to need to build a tabernacle right in my backyard or anything like that. And we just kind of tend to skim through these details. But this year, my goal, or I guess my word of the year, you can say, is studious. And I really wanted to study the Bible because I've read it. I've read it a few times over. I've like studied, I guess you can say, specific books, but I've never actually studied the entire Bible. And to be honest, like I've never really studied anything in the Old Testament. Um, so this year, I really wanted to learn. Like, I really want to look at the Bible in like its historical facts, right? In like its like it's in its all entirety, I guess you can say. So as I'm reading these passages, at the end of Exodus, and we just started Leviticus, and Leviticus, like the first four chapters, is pretty much almost about the sacrifices, right? Um, and so I'm reading this and I'm just like, okay, usually I always just kind of pass on through and usually I don't really pay attention to what's going on. Honestly, it wasn't until today that I found out that the tabernacle was in the shape of a cross. And I remember I just, I heard that and I was like, wait, where the heck does it say that? Anyways, obviously this is why we always, every year, read the Bible. It's because every year we learn something new. And that is what I learned, I guess, what I learned today. Um, But the only thing I kept thinking about as I'm reading these chapters and as I'm really trying to like pay attention and as I'm really trying to focus and just kind of dwell on every detail is that God doesn't skim through the details. And God so like graciously but so meticulously like is in the details. Like, have you ever just looked up at the sky? I'm sure we all have, but have you ever just looked up at the sky and seen the clouds and look at the sun? Don't look directly at the sun, but looking at the sun and the clouds and how just like the sun lights everything up, right? And have you ever just like looked at a flower, but like really looked at it, really examined it, and just like the texture of the stem, the shape of the leaves, right? And then like each petal and just like the details in them, right? Sometimes petals have little creases, sometimes they have different markings. Um, Sometimes the center of the flower is like a different texture. There's little balls at the end, right? Like that's just staring at something so ordinary. And I don't want to say that flowers or the sky or anything like that is ordinary, but something that like we see on a daily basis, but we don't actually take the time to really pay attention to it. I want you today or tomorrow, I don't know what time you're listening to this, but whenever the sky or the sun is outside and the sky is nice and blue with clouds, although today it was raining all day, but like look up and look and pay attention to just the details that God has given us in our everyday lives and the details that we pretty much just pass on through and that we don't even realize. When you're looking at a flower, tomorrow's Valentine's Day, or I guess today when this releases is Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day. And if you are one of the lucky few who get flowers on Valentine's Day, like grab one of those flowers and just really pay attention to the details. Like God does not miss absolutely any detail. And I think that that is extremely beautiful. And I was just like thinking of like, when you look at yourself in the mirror, for me, I'm still working on looking at myself in the mirror and realizing what a beautiful and perfect creation God created of me. I'm still not there yet. I'm still very critical of myself. Um, but if you look at yourself in the mirror, like God didn't miss absolutely any detail in your face, in your body, and anything, in your personality, the way that you are. Like he didn't miss a single detail. I love looking at my kids and I love just like staring at their faces sometimes. One of my favorite things to do is just looking at my kids when they're eating. Um, and so I'll look at them when they're eating and just the beautiful details that God has made out of their tiny little faces, right? Like my daughter with her really curly, coily, like red hair that we still don't know where she got that from. And then just like the way that her eyelashes curl and the shape of her lips and my son, his long eyelashes and just like the simple subtle blonde curls that he has and the color of his eyes, which I don't know. Every day they seem like they're just a different color, right? Like just those beautiful details. And I can say like, yeah, my son and my daughter genetically are a creation of my husband and I, but really they're a creation of God. And God didn't miss a single detail when he created them. And so as you're reading these chapters of the tabernacle or the sacrifices or anything like that, right? Like he didn't miss a single detail. And I think that the way that we should think about these times of stillness and these times of like not feeling a grand gesture of God is that he's meticulously working on those tiny little beautiful details that we don't really pay attention to in our everyday lives, but that are always there. And that is something beautiful. I think this is something that I didn't really expect was going to come at me at the end of this episode. But now that I'm kind of putting the two and two together, like, I might not be able to hear God directly right now, right? He might just keep me in this season of waiting because he's working on a very tiny detail that I'm not even paying attention to right now because I'm so just sinful in my own way and selfish in my own way. But one day, I don't know when, but one day, when I finally see what God was doing, I'm going to realize, like, wow, in that time where I didn't necessarily feel his presence, he was working on one very tiny specific detail. And with that detail, turned into this beautiful, bigger thing. Is 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 that making sense? um God doesn't he he doesn't forget about the tiny details. The details that we just kind of, pass over, and then the details that we don't really pay attention to. The details that we're like, that's just everyday life, but really they it's just it's so specifically put there by God for a reason. And that little specific detail is what creates something bigger and better. And that to me is kind of amazing. um, that to me is just kind of shows me like the love that God has for me. That He takes the time to mold and to bend and to curve and to shape everything so beautifully to create something so beautiful. So, my prayer for today is that those of us who feel that we are in a season of stillness, that feel that God somehow, I don't know, isn't listening to us or isn't there, or we're not really feeling his presence, that we feel kind of stuck, that we remember that one, that God never forgets us, that God will never leave us, but also that God's timing is always right. God doesn't work like Uber Eats or DoorDash. He doesn't work like Amazon Prime. He doesn't want us to have 3-second attention span. And he works this way to one, make us more patient, but truly to make us trust him more, but also so that he can carve out every single little beautiful detail. Today, I am learning to let go of my impatience. I am learning to accept that in this time of quiet and of stillness, God is still working in my life, even if it doesn't feel that way. And just trusting that God has a bigger and better plan than I could ever even dream of or think of for myself. Because I am a new creation.